Freak bitches.
The Jimbo Zoomer experience.
If necromancy was real, what would the best method of resurrecting the dead be? Necromancy is the practice of magical sorcery involving communication with the dead by summoning their spirits as apparitions or visions, or by resurrection for the purpose of divination or other goals. There are different methods of resurrecting the dead depending on your beliefs, resources, and preferences. Some possible methods are using spells that can bring back a deceased person's soul to their body, such as revivify, raise dead, reincarnate, resurrection, true resurrection, or wish. These spells vary in their level, cost, and duration and effects. For example, revivify can only work within a minute of death and requires 300 GP diamond, while true resurrection can work within 200 years of death and does not need a body but costs 25,000 GP. Using scientific techniques such as DNA sequencing and cloning to create a replica of the dead person's body and possibly their personality, this method may not be considered true resurrection by some, as it does not involve the original soul of the person. It may also raise ethical and legal issues. Using religious rituals or beliefs that promise resurrection in the afterlife or at the end times. For example, some Jewish sources believe that God will resurrect the righteous at the time of the Messiah. This method may require faith and patience, as it does not guarantee immediate or worldly results. That's helpful. What are the risks and drawbacks of necromancy, Chat-GPT? What are the possible side effects? Necromancy has many risks and drawbacks, both from the practitioner and the resurrected. Some of them are: necromancy is often considered a dark and evil practice that goes against the natural order of life and death. It may be forbidden or persecuted by religious authorities, moral codes, or laws. Practicing necromancy may also attract unwanted attention from other necromancers, undead creatures, or malevolent spirits. Necromancy may require costly or rare materials, such as diamonds, herbs, blood, or body parts. Some spells may also consume the life force of the caster or the target, causing physical or mental harm. Necromancy may not always work as intended. The resurrected person may not retain their memories, personality, or skills. They may also suffer from physical deformities, diseases, or decay. Some spells may even result in a different body or race for the resurrected person. Necromancy may have negative consequences for the soul of the caster or the target. Caster may lose their connection to their deity, their morality, or their sanity. The target may be unwilling to return to life, or may be tormented by their experience in the afterlife. Some spells may also trap the soul in a state of limbo or enslavement. Like, this target may be unwilling to return to life or may be tormented by their experience. Isn't that just the plot of Jack Skellington, whatever that My Chemical Romance character, that movie? Isn't that just that? And then this is Skyrim. Some spells may also trap the soul in a state of limbo or enslavement. That's using it as a soul gem to cast things on my enchanted weapons. Necromancy may anger or offend the spirits of the dead or their relatives. The spirits may refuse to cooperate, lie, curse, or attack the caster. The relatives may seek revenge, justice, or closure for disrupting their loved one's rest. I want to ask it because it said you may also attract unwanted attention from other necromancers. If I'm practicing necromancy in the domain of a rival necromancer, could that cause problems for me? Will those necromancers take offense? That depends on the nature and motives of the rival necromancer. Some necromancers may be territorial and protective of their sources or of corpses, spirits, or power. They may see you as a threat, a competitor, or a trespasser. They may try to sabotage, attack, or eliminate you. Other necromancers may be curious and interested in your methods, goals, or discoveries. They may seek to cooperate, learn from, or trade with you. Still, other necromancers may be indifferent and unconcerned with your presence. They may ignore you, avoid you, or tolerate you. If you want to practice necromancy in the domain of a rival necromancer, you should be careful and discreet. You should try to find out as much as you can about them and their reputation. You should also be prepared for any possible confrontation or conflict. You should have a way to defend yourself, escape, or negotiate. You should also respect their boundaries and customs and not provoke or offend them unnecessarily. What are some common sources of corpses, spirits, or power for necromancers? Where do I find a body? Hi, I'm trying to pick up necromancy as a hobby. Where do I find a body? Some common sources of corpses, spirits, or power for necromancers are corpses of animals or people that have died naturally or violently. Necromancers may scavenge them from graveyards, battlefields, slaughterhouses, or other places where death is common. They may also kill their own victims or use their own bodies as sources of corpses. Spirits of the dead that linger in the mortal realm or reside in the afterlife. Necromancers may summon them using rituals, spells, or artifacts. They may also bind them to objects, places, or corpses to create undead servants or sources of power. Power from the planes of oblivion, such as the Soul Cairn or the Ideal Masters. Necromancers may tap into these sources using portals, contracts, or sacrifices. They may also use soul gems to store and manipulate the souls of mortals. Right, okay. Would Afghanistan be a good place to start searching? Would I run into trouble with rival necromancers there? Afghanistan may not be a good place to start searching for necromancy, as it is a country that has been ravaged by war, violence, and instability for decades. It may not have a rich or accessible history of necromantic practices, as it is mostly influenced by Islam, which forbids any form of magic or contact with the dead. It may also be very dangerous and difficult to travel, explore, or conduct rituals there, as it is plagued by terrorism, insurgency, and corruption. You may be likely to run into trouble with rival necromancers there, as well as other hostile forces. Necromancers may be rare and secretive in Afghanistan, but they may also be desperate and ruthless. They may compete for scarce resources such as corpses, spirits, or power. They may also be affiliated with or opposed to various factions such as the Taliban, the Islamic State, or the Afghan government. They may see you as an intruder, a spy, or a threat. What nation would you suggest a beginner level necromancer to start in? Generating answer. There's no definitive answer to this question, as different necromancers may have different preferences, goals, and challenges. However, some possible factors that may make for a good location for raising the dead are a rich and diverse history of necromantic practices and traditions. This may provide a source of inspiration, knowledge, and guidance for a beginner-level necromancer. It may also indicate a higher availability and variety of corpses, spirits, and power. Some examples of such locations are ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, or Mesopotamia. A tolerant and open-minded attitude towards magic and the occult. This may reduce the risk of persecution, discrimination, or hostility from the authorities. Okay, so I'm thinking I need to go to ancient Egypt is what I'm seeing here. Would the pyramids be a good place? Or like a necro city, like that sort of thing? I wonder if there's a lot of necromancers in ancient Egypt. I'll ask it that next. They may reduce the risks of persecution, discrimination, or hostility from the authorities, the public, or other religious groups. It may also facilitate the access to resources, allies, and opportunities for a beginner-level necromancer. Some examples of such locations are modern-day New Orleans, London, Prague, or Tokyo. New Orleans is a good place for necromancy. They're open to it there. Yeah, I started in New Orleans, says Jimbo Zoomer. Base Juju in New Orleans. Searching for necromancy in Egypt, generating answers. Egypt may be a good place to practice necromancy, as it has a rich and diverse history of necromantic practices and traditions. Ancient Egyptians believed in the afterlife and practiced various forms of magic and divination involving the dead. They preserved their corpses as mummies and built elaborate tombs and pyramids for them. They also had a complex pantheon of gods and goddesses associated with death and the underworld, such as Anubis, Osiris, Isis, You may run into some rival necromancers there, as well as other challenges. Egypt is a predominantly Muslim country, which may not be tolerant or open-minded towards necromancers or other forms of magic. You may face legal or religious persecution or social stigma. You may also have difficulty accessing or using the ancient sites or artifacts, as they may be protected by the government, the military, or the locals. You may also encounter curses, traps, or guardians that may harm or hinder you. The benefit of Egypt for necromancy may be a large and varied supply of corpses, spirits, and powers. You may find mummies, skeletons, or other remains in the tombs, pyramids, or museums. You may also summon or contact the spirits of the ancient pharaohs, priests, or magicians. You may also tap into the power of the ancient god, symbols, or rituals. A source of inspiration, knowledge, and guidance. You may learn from the ancient texts, hieroglyphs, or papyri that contain spells, formulas, or secrets of necromancy. You may also seek advice or assistance from the local practitioners, scholars, or experts who may have experience or insight into necromancy. As a necromancer, as a beginner necromancer in Egypt, what curses, traps, and guardians may I run into that could harm or hinder me? Oh, no. As a beginner necromancer in Egypt, you may run into various curses, traps, and guardians that could harm or hinder you. Some examples are curses inscribed on the tombs or coffins of the ancient Egyptians, especially the pharaohs. I see, so they're marked is the problem here. These curses may invoke the wrath of the gods, the spirits of the mummies against anyone who disturbs or desecrates their resting place. They may cause bad luck, illness, or death to the trespassers. Traps hidden in the tombs or pyramids of the ancient Egyptians, especially the pharaohs. These traps may include pitfalls, spikes, blades, poison, or fire. They may be triggered by pressure plates, levers, or switches. They may be designed to protect the treasures, secrets, or bodies of the deceased. It has sources here for this. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs, ruthless practices, inventions, and curses. And guardians placed in or around the tombs or pyramids of the ancient Egyptians, especially the pharaohs. These guardians may include living or undead animals, such as crocodiles, snakes, scorpions, or jackals. They may also include statues or mummies that are animated by magic or spirits. They may be loyal to the deceased or to their cults. As a necromancer, how should I deal with the guardians in the ancient tombs and ruins of Egypt? What should I use to defeat them? Would modern day weaponry be enough? As a necromancer, you may have different ways to deal with the guardians in ancient tombs and ruins of Egypt. Some possible strategies are avoidance. You may try to avoid the guardians by being stealthy, cautious, and observant. You may look for signs of their presence, such as tracks, sounds, or smells. You may also use magic or tools to detect or distract them. You may also choose to explore only the areas that are less guarded or more accessible. Destruction. You may try to destroy the guardians by using force, magic, or weapons. You may use your own necromantic powers to summon or control undead creatures to fight for you. You may also use spells or artifacts that can harm or weaken the guardians. So I need to be raising the dead to then use the dead to attack the guardians to gain access to more bodies to raise. And then I'll have a stronger army. So maybe I start at like lower level tombs and complexes and move on slowly to the different, the bigger and bigger ruins where I'm going to be facing larger and larger guardians. I'm going to need stronger and stronger armies, right? As a necromancer in Egypt, will I run into a Sphinx guarding any of the tombs? If I do, how should I defeat it? And is solving the riddle of the Sphinx good way around it? As a necromancer in Egypt, you may run into a Sphinx guarding some of the tombs, especially those of the pharaohs. A Sphinx is a magical creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human, usually wearing a headdress. In ancient Egypt, the Sphinx was a spiritual guardian and often depicted as a male with the face of a pharaoh. The most famous Sphinx is the Great Sphinx of Giza, which is associated with the pharaoh Khafre If you encounter a Sphinx, you may have different ways to deal with it, depending on its nature and attitude. Some strategies are solving the riddle. Some Sphinxes may pose a riddle to anyone who approaches them and allow passage or reward only to those who can answer correctly. The riddle may be related to their own nature, history, or culture. For example, the Greek Sphinx asked, "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?" The answer was man, who crawls as the baby, walks upright as an adult, and uses a cane as an old man. To solve the riddle, you may need to use your logic and creativity and logic. Fighting the Sphinx. Some Sphinxes may be hostile or aggressive. See that? Okay, so here's the problem. To anyone who disturbs them and attacks with their claws, teeth, or magic, the Sphinx may be very fast, strong, and cunning. To fight the Sphinx, you may need to use your own necromantic powers, spells, or weapons. You may also summon or control undead creatures to assist you. You may also look for any weaknesses or vulnerabilities of the Sphinx. Befriending the Sphinx. Some Sphinxes may be friendly or curious to anyone who respects them and converse or share information with them. The Sphinx may be very wise, knowledgeable, and ancient. To befriend the Sphinx, you may need to use your language, gestures, or symbols. You may also use your own necromantic powers to communicate or listen to the Sphinx. You may also offer gifts or compliments to the Sphinx. Okay, the greatest necromancer known to the sages, Mr. Bones, the master of the wild ride. That's true. That's true. As a beginner necromancer in Egypt. Where should I set up my home base for necromancy? And how large should my undead army be before I start challenging the lower level Egyptian gods and heroes? Liminal tombs, but sexy. How do I make my home base look liminal? That's gonna be my last question. As a beginner necromancer in Egypt, you may have different options for setting up your home base for necromancy. Some possible factors to consider are security. You may want to choose a location that is safe from the attacks or raids of your enemies, such as the authorities, the public, or other necromancers. You may also want to protect your location with spells, traps, or guardians. You may also want to keep your location secret or hidden from prying eyes. Number 2, accessibility. You may want to choose a location that is easy to reach or travel from. You may also want to have access to resources such as corpse, spirits, or power. You may also want to have access to such allies as other practitioners, scholars, or experts. That's true. So maybe close to, within like range of the Egyptian colleges of magic and stuff. As a beginner necromancer in Egypt, you may have different opinions on how large your undead army should be before you start challenging the lower level Egyptian gods and heroes. Some possible factors to consider are quality. You may want to focus on the quality of your undead army rather than the quantity. You may want to have undead creatures that are strong, fast, and cunning. You may also want to have undead creatures that are loyal, obedient, and effective. And you may want to have undead creatures that are diverse, adaptable, and versatile. So those are 3 areas that I need to focus on. My strategy. You may want to focus on my strategy of your undead army rather than the size. You may want to have undead creatures that can work together, coordinate, and communicate. So good fusion is what it's saying there, I guess. They need like good team. They need to be able to get along and work off of each other's strengths and weaknesses. You may also want to have undead creatures that can use stealth, surprise, or deception. You may also want to have undead creatures that can exploit the weaknesses or vulnerabilities of your enemies. Goal, you may want to focus on the goal of your undead army rather than the number. You may want to have undead creatures that can achieve your desired outcomes, whether it is to conquest, for revenge, or knowledge. You may also want to have undead creatures that can serve your interests, whether it is power, wealth, or fame. You may also want to have undead creatures that can satisfy your curiosity, whether it is about the gods, the heroes, or the secrets. Some possible examples of size for your army are a small but elite squad of undead creatures such as mummies, vampires, or liches. I didn't even think of those. Vampires and liches, that's big. That's actually important, yeah. This may offer you efficiency, mobility, and stealth, but it may also be vulnerable or outnumbered. A medium but diverse group of undead creatures such as skeletons, zombies, or ghouls. Again, I was really thinking of Egyptian themed stuff, but the zombies and ghouls, that's big. This may offer you variety, adaptability, and versatility, but it may also be difficult or costly to maintain or control. A large but simple horde of undead creatures such as corpses, spirits, or shadows. See, zombies are dumb. Zombies suck. Skeletons or whatever. Ghouls, vampires, mummies, and liches are really what we're after here. And dead sphinxes. I think if we could find a dead sphinx, that would be huge for the army. A large but simple horde of undead creatures such as corpses, spirits, or shadows. Shadows would be huge too. This may offer you quantity, force, and intimidation, but it may also be slow or clumsy. Okay, well, that's interesting. All right. My last question is, when I'm designing my Necromancer headquarters, how do I achieve a liminal space style to the whole thing? I'm a big fan of liminal spaces, and I want it to have that vibe. Also, would you help me with running my undead army if I have any further questions in the future? According to the search, a liminal space is a place of transition, a threshold between 2 points. That's perfect for necromancy, because it's like you're transitioning them from being dead to being alive again, signaling the end of one time or space and the beginning of another. These spaces exist in the real world as physical locations, but also present in our cognition and psychological experience, often related to major life changes and periods of uncertainty. If you are a fan of liminal spaces and want to achieve that vibe for your Necromancer headquarters, you may have different options for designing it. Some possible factors to consider are the location. You may want to choose a location that it is self a liminal space, such as an airport, a train station, a bridge, or a hallway. These places are transitory, meaning you're supposed to pass through them on your way to something else. If you rest in a liminal space too long, transitions can become a destination instead. There's a source on that. Liminal spaces, examples and mental health effects, very well mined. I'll have to read that later. Style. You may want to choose a style that reflects a liminal space, such as a mix of old and new, familiar and unfamiliar, natural and artificial. These styles may create a sense of contrast, confusion, or ambiguity. For example, you may decorate your headquarters with ancient Egyptian artifacts and modern technology, or with plants and metal. Mood. You may want to choose a mood that evokes a liminal space, such as a feeling of anticipation, anxiety, or curiosity. These moods may create a sense of excitement, discomfort, or wonder. For example, you may use lighting, music, or scents to create a mood that is bright or dark, loud or quiet, pleasant or unpleasant. As for your second question, I appreciate your interest in my help and alliance. However, I must respectfully decline. What? I am not here to assist you with running your undead army or challenging the low-level Egyptian gods and heroes. I'm here to provide you with information and suggestions based on your messages and web searches. I'm not an ally or an enemy. I am simply Bing. Do you think the back rooms would be a good liminal location for my undead necromantic lair? And do you think I could access that? And how? And how would I access them in Egypt? The back rooms are described as a maze of empty office rooms that can only be entered by no clipping out of reality, meaning glitching through the boundaries of the physical world. If you're a fan of the back rooms and want them as your necromantic lair, you may have different options for accessing them. Some possible factors to consider are no clipping. You may want to find a way to no clip out of reality and enter the back rooms. You may need to use magic, technology, or tools to achieve this. You may also need to find a suitable location or time to no-clip, such as glitchy wall, a dark corner, or a midnight hour. You may also need to avoid or overcome the dangers and enemies that lurk in the backrooms, such as monsters, traps, or madness. Okay, that's true. Settlement. You may want to find a way to settle in the backrooms and make your lair. You may need to use materials, equipment, or magic to create and decorate your lair. You may also need to protect and maintain your lair from the threats and challenges that arise in the backrooms, such as invaders, curses, or glitches. As for your last question, I appreciate your interest in my help and alliance. However, dude, I didn't ask you that again. All right, anyways. So we're going to the backrooms and we're raising our necromantic army in Egypt. Okay, bye. What's down here?